Imagine you're standing on the deck of a merchant ship in the mid-3rd century BCE, approaching the Egyptian coast. The sea traffic is unlike anything you have ever seen. Ships crowd the harbour from every direction. Grain boats from the Nile, wine merchants from Rhodes, political ambassadors from Antioch, vessels carrying spices from India and Arabia, possibly even silks from China. Towering above them all is a structure so tall it seems to defy reality, the lighthouse of Pharos. Its fire visible far out to sea, a beacon beckoning all to its ports. Behind it rises the city itself. Wide avenues, sprawling palace complexes, temples, the famed library and government buildings, all shimmering under the Mediterranean sun. This is Alexandria. After the death of Alexander the Great in 323 BCE, the Greek world fractured into competing kingdoms, each with its own cities, armies and ambitions. Cities like Antioch, Pergamon, Rhodes and Athens all vied for influence. Yet across the 3 centuries of the Hellenistic Age, Alexandria emerged as its premier city. What was it that made Alexandria different? Perhaps the city's most valuable asset, as any good real estate agent will tell you, was its location. It turned out that the removal of Egypt's capital from Memphis, at the southern end of the delta, to the northwestern tip of the Canopic branch was a masterstroke by Alexander and later the Ptolemies, as it moved the focus of Egypt from internal to project it into a wider Greco-Macedonian and later Roman world, where it could press home its trade advantage. The value of Egypt's location as the link for seaborne trade between Europe and Asia remains unchanged, as was evidenced when a certain Ever Given had a parking mishap in March of 2021. From its position on the Mediterranean coastline, Alexandria had easy access in only a matter of days to the grain trading hub of the island of Rhodes, from which it could supply the markets in Greece and Anatolia. Via the Mareotic Lake on its southern side, it had access to both the River Nile and the Red Sea, which in turn gave it access to the spices and other exotic goods from the Gulf region, and further afield in Africa, India and China. The building of 2 deep-water ports on the Mediterranean side greatly increased the shipping capacity of Egypt, and provided a secure location for traders to exchange their wares. As early as the 3rd century BCE, Alexandria had flourished into a city of several 100,000, and with a taste for conspicuous consumption, made it a prime candidate for trading magnates from east and west to find ready buyers for whatever they were selling. By taking advantage of its geographic location, the Ptolemaic dynasty made Alexandria the foremost commercial hub of the ancient Mediterranean. As a trading hub, Alexandria was connected to a vast network of resources, agriculture, production facilities, as well as the vital merchants and customers. The goods that flowed through the city included ivory, gold and spices, luxury items such as silk from the east, and agricultural products like oil, wine and fish from the Greek world. At the same time, Egypt's agricultural wealth, particularly its grain, was transported down the Nile to Alexandria, where it was redistributed across the Mediterranean, forming the backbone of its economic power. Other natural resources, supported by the Nile, including the state-controlled fishing industry, ensured a consistent supply of raw materials for the city's manufacturers. As a major centre of manufacture, Alexandria produced several valuable goods such as glass, linen and papyrus, over which it held a monopoly. The combination of international trade, local production and resource control meant that Alexandria functioned as a trade hub and a centre for value-adding industry, helping solidify its dominance in the Hellenistic world. It is difficult to overemphasise the importance of Egypt's grain production to Alexandria and the wider Hellenistic world. Egypt's agriculture, sustained by the regular inundation of the Nile, allowed vast quantities of grain to be transported downriver to Alexandria, where it came under royal control before it was redistributed to various markets in Egypt and abroad. Grain production was uneven across the Mediterranean, and other population centres, especially in Greece and Rome, relied heavily on imports to sustain their citizens. Merchant ships regularly carried these cargoes across the sea, and the consistent flow of grain from Alexandria was so significant that it supplied a substantial portion of Rome's food requirements. In later periods, under Augustus, 5 million bushels, equal to about 150,000 tonnes, was reserved for the city of Rome each year. This role made Alexandria a critical supplier of food, giving it immense economic and political leverage. While a steady income for the royal house meant a well-resourced army could protect the stability of the system, as well as fund the building projects that broadcast their success. By controlling this vital resource, Alexandria secured its position in the wider Hellenistic world. Another key advantage Alexandria had was that it was a planned city, designed for the era in which it thrived. Appointed by Alexander, the famed architect Dinocrates of Rhodes designed the city on an organised grid pattern, with wide streets intersecting at right angles, a feature of Hellenistic town planners. Running on an east-west axis through the city was the main thoroughfare, over 30 metres or 100 foot wide, allowing for efficient transport through the city and an ideal location for the extravagant parades favoured by the Ptolemaic kings. This intersected with a north-south road of equal width in the centre of the city. This put it in stark contrast with ancient Rome, whose narrow streets were only 1.2 to 2.4 metres wide, with many streets too narrow for vehicles to pass each other. This caused such chaos and congestion that by Julius Caesar's day he was caused to issue a ban on carts entering the city during the day. To improve the comfort of the city, colonnades were built on the main road to provide protection from the sun. Visiting the city just after the Hellenistic period in the 20s BCE, the geographer Strabo notes the vast quantity and monumental nature of the buildings, including the library and museum, the royal palaces and the harbours, and related infrastructure. He also notes the cooling effect of the breeze coming off the sea or the lake, making it a pleasant place to be even in the height of summer. The overall effect of the carefully planned architecture and organised street layout would have reinforced its status in the Hellenistic world to residents and visitors alike. The Ptolemaic kings' tight administrative control and economic planning consolidated and focused political control to the core of the royal house. Inheriting Egypt's agricultural wealth was only the first step. The Ptolemies brought organisation to the task with a highly centralised system in which the state managed both the production and distribution of resources. Grain was transported north down the Nile to Alexandria, where it was then sold either back into Egypt or onto markets elsewhere. Grain was not the only resource to be treated this way. Salt production also became monopolised by the state, while the fishing industry was heavily regulated. By maintaining tight control over the economy, the Ptolemaic dynasty maximised the concentration of wealth in their own coffers, while leveraging their supply power for political gain at home and abroad. Beyond the hard power of trade and economic coercion, the Ptolemies also established Alexandria as the Hellenistic Age's unrivalled cultural and intellectual powerhouse, and utilised this soft power to increase its reputation. This was accomplished by deliberate policy, and Ptolemaic royal patronage of the museum and the famed Library of Alexandria. It was the establishment of these centres of learning that transformed the city into a centre of research and scholarship. The museum functioned as a community of scholars, whose needs such as accommodation, food and salaries were provided by the state, leaving them to focus on their studies into mathematics, literature, astronomy and philosophy. Meanwhile, the library worked to gather every book and include it, translated into Greek, in the library. This was accomplished at great expense, with agents sent through the Greek world to purchase books, preferably as old and close to the original as possible. As well as this, any ship that docked in Athens ports was searched for manuscripts, which were confiscated and their owners provided with copies. This systematic collection, and the power and wealth behind the project, made Alexandria the focal point of Hellenistic academia. By concentrating these resources in one place, it created an irresistible pull, attracting scholars from across the Greek world, and ensured Alexandria thrived economically and culturally. Its legacy of being a centre of learning and knowledge carried on well into the Roman period. Outside of the strictly academic sphere, Alexandria also exerted an outsized influence on the religious practices of the Hellenistic world. As a cosmopolitan city Where diverse populations interacted, it became a centre of religious innovation, blending Greek, Egyptian, and other traditions into new forms of belief. This is most clearly seen in the development and spread of the cults of Isis and Serapis, who were promoted from Alexandria and extended through the wider Greco-Roman world, demonstrating the city's far-reaching religious influence. Within the city, an extraordinary variety of religious practices coexisted, as worshippers of numerous deities from across the Mediterranean and beyond mingled in daily life, encouraging the fusion of ideas and the creation of new theological systems. By serving as a meeting point between East and West, and facilitating the blending and dissemination of religious ideas, Alexandria reflected the diversity of the Hellenistic world, and actively shaped its changing spiritual landscape. This reinforced its importance as a cultural and ideological centre. Alexandria's transformation from sleepy fishing village to the most important city of the Hellenistic world was no accident. It was the result of deliberate planning, leveraging of its geographic advantage, and effective if authoritarian governance. Its strategic location linked the resources of Egypt to the wider Mediterranean, allowing it to dominate trade networks and control the distribution of essential commodities. This strong economic base was reinforced by the centralised administration, which ensured wealth and resources were funneled to the top. At the same time, Alexandria was designed with the infrastructure to support its rapid growth, while its intellectual institutions, especially the museum and library, established it as the leading centre of knowledge and scholarship. Its diverse population fostered cultural and religious exchange, enabling the city to exert influence on the intellectual and religious life of the Hellenistic world. Through this combination of economic power, political authority, and cultural influence, Alexandria came to be the most important city of the Hellenistic Age.